Welcome back. I'm Mikey Microphone, and the microphone is a metaphor for the fact that you have something beautiful to say, but you need to make the arrangements so you can be heard. We're nearing the end of my refactoring of the editing tools for ebooks. That is it's the hidden part of my platform that people can only access if they have my permission to write a book. If you know anyone that would like to write a book for me, please have them get in touch. And uh, I greatly look forward to hearing from some people who want that. What I've done is refactored the tool set that allows writers to edit their content, remove pieces that they don't want anymore, and move around the pieces that they have. Um, the goal is that you can do kind of unlimited editing without refreshing the page. And I began by updating the paragraph tool set. Then I was able to apply the same code to work for the citation tool set. And now I'm going to try to do the same thing to use that code for the section tool set. So this chapter, it has 4 sections, and I can reorder them, I can edit them, and so a lot of these tools already are working for sections, um, but I'm excited about using the exact same code for uh, all of these different controllers that allow edits, and I think that that's going to give me more more leverage in the long run, because when I enhance the tools, I'll it'll be simpler for me to do that. This is also going to enable me to add tools, add a tool which currently doesn't exist for sections, which would basically be moving the section into a different chapter. And probably the most relevant application of that would be if you wanted to divide a chapter into 2 sections, like if I wanted to move cosplay into its own chapter, then I could take the section and all the content in it and uh, move it directly into the chapter without rewriting anything. So I believe that the sections controller doesn't yet have a delay. Yeah, so it has promote, it has append, create, edit, update, and destroy, but it doesn't have delay. So looking at the template that generates the links that allow the user to control the section, so those links are here. The section is spelled out with the heading and the subheading, and then there's the control links, and from there it starts to display the paragraphs, and for each paragraph then it displays the citations. And this code we can actually clean up a fair amount as well. We can do that a little later. Let's stick to the refactor that's most similar to what we did in the last video. Okay, so I know from my earlier refactoring that I can remove these JS stipulations. And since they still say remote is true, the behavior will be the same. And perhaps what I'll do is, rather than editing these links, perhaps what I'll do is actually copy them. So I'll leave these as is right here, and I'll go into the sections helper and copy some code from the paragraphs helper. So I'll take that, go to the sections helper, and I'll do a quick find and replace for replacing paragraph with section. Replace, replace. Then, okay, so this, okay, so since I replaced paragraph with section first, now replacing section with chapter, I have to be a lot more careful because I think this is the other position where I need to put, nope, that one is paragraph. Okay, so section goes here. So in the context of a section, this is going to be chapter. And I can recall from the previous video that I only had to do that once. There is nowhere else in this method where the term section table of content appears. So, and I know just logically thinking that delay is the only action that checks whether the parent level has siblings. Basically, you can't delay a section into the following chapter if there is no following chapter. So, I'm satisfied with that. I know that there's no delay section path, so I'll go ahead and handle that by going into the roots file and add that there. And then why don't we go right into the sections controller and add a delay. I'll just take this code and I'll review this for any place, so I can recall from the last video, this is the only place in this code where particular terminology is appearing. The rest of it is all generalized terminology that has to do with the hierarchy of content. And then looking at the sections templates, make a delay.js.erb. I'll take a look at how this one operates, paste it in here, and then replace this with chapter, replace this with section. Okay, so this operation, visually appending the section to the following chapter, that will not be relevant some of the time because often when I'm editing chapters, I view them one at a time. I do have an editing interface that allows the author to edit the whole book on a single page, but I kind of quickly got away from that and moved into this chapter by chapter interface. And the main reason for that was because I was refreshing the interface so much, and I didn't want to load the entire book and all the table of content objects each time I made an edit that required to refresh. So I guess to test that, we can go to the overall edit interface. You can see it takes a few seconds to load. Okay. Okay, so I haven't yet plugged in the I haven't yet plugged this method into the templates. So let's do that now. And I'll refresh this. Okay, so you can see there's two groups of controls here. These are the ones that are being generated by this code, and these are the ones that are being generated by this one. So there's an interface issue here. What I have been doing with my section control is I put the append link at the bottom of it, and so when I write a paragraph, when I want to write another paragraph, I'm just down here at the bottom of the section. With this control bank, this append is here at the top with the rest of the controls. So I think what I'm going to do is just simply remove that from that helper. I'm actually going to cut it rather than just delete it, because I do want to okay. I'm going to look at the paragraphs helper, append to paragraph table of content. Okay, so append to the new version of this. So focus append on was my old version. Append to is my new version. This control is already there, and so I can just remove it from the helper, and I still have it. And just to quickly review this, if you look at the status bar at the bottom of my browser, this edit link has a book ID, chapter ID, edition ID. This edit link has just a table of content ID. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these. If I do need to refer to them, Git will, they're saved in the repository, so I can just refer to them that way. In fact, there's a very quick way for me to do so. Just looking here, I can see the code right here. And so now having the new version of the edit links, I'm going to go through and update the controller code so that those will work. start with edit. So in the sections controller, edit was looking up these discrete pieces of data. In the paragraphs controller, it just looks up the table of content and the content. So sections controller, that should suffice. Now, paragraph edit, section edit. Okay. So paragraph edit, it appends to the paragraph. Section edit, it appends to the data on the section. Okay. Let's look at what that is, looking at the data on section. Okay, so this is basically a way to put the edit control at the top of the section div instead of the bottom. And I'm going to stick with that. So I'm going to keep the first half of this the same. The second half, the section form is taking the chapter in a section. Paragraph, it's taking a table of content in the paragraph. So section, I'm going to change that to take a table of content. Then I'll go to the sections helper and look at the form. So this is going to now take a table of content. These three hidden fields are going to be replaced with this one hidden field. This is going to get the chapter out of the table of content. And it's not necessary to refer to the chapter while creating the section. So that looks about right. So I think this form will be prepared. Okay, I do have to hang. Oh no, the section is not hanging off the table of content. The section is being generated right here. So this will, I think, submit a proper payload to the controller, which is prepared to edit, or to update rather, in this form. So I'm going to take this code, go to the sections controller, and before deleting it, I'll just replace it real quick. Okay. So there is a lot of similarity with the old code. This is different. Rather than grabbing all the IDs, we are just grabbing the one. The chapter is what we're going to hang section off of. And then this part is going to be like that. And then looking at the template that happens after, in the paragraph update, DOM ID append section to paragraph, paragraph control, and takes the table of content. In sections, DOM ID append section to chapter, and the section control is going to take the section table of content and reload it. Okay, so let's see if this works. So I'll go ahead and move to a chapter that has sections. Okay, here's one. So a nice feature of my browser, and probably every browser, is that if you are scrolled to a certain point and you reload, it will usually it will scroll you back to that same point. So that's part of the reason why I thought this interface was somewhat usable. So I realized that I don't think I tested the delay mechanics, so I'll hit delay here. Okay, that's for the paragraph. Hit delay here. And this section has now been moved to the following paragraph. If I reload, let's see if it's still here. Oh, interesting. So the section is here, but the paragraphs that were inside it are not. So that code was not successful. Look at the sections controller and delay. Okay, so I think that when I was using this tool set for paragraphs, I was using it for paragraphs that didn't have any contained data, like citations. So that is buggy. And it will also not work for paragraphs where it was originally, or this code was originally written. So rather than just updating this table of content with the new chapter ID, I also need to update all the contained table of contents. And since it's just a single attribute, I'll use this slightly different API. Oop, there we go. Okay. Okay, that seems right. So I'll try this again. I'll move this section that should say move to next chapter. Sections helper, delay, move to next chapter. I'll click it, move to here, and then I'll refresh. And again, the contained content is not appearing. Okay. So this is because I've already updated the chapter ID before attempting to find its contained content. So it's going to not find it. It's going to look in the wrong place. It's going to look for the wrong chapter. So I'll just change the order that those are being done. And then, since this table of content, it's part of its contained group, it will now have its chapter ID set. And so we can just proceed by updating the ordering. So okay. So when I hit delay, the visual update was not right. Let's see what happens when I refresh. Okay, so now this section is no longer in that chapter. It is in this chapter, and it does have its contained content. Try this one more time and see what happens visually. So I'll delay. Okay, so again, it didn't move to the correct place. Let's look at the Ajax that we got from the server. Okay, so in the last video we noticed that sometimes the Ajax isn't actually captured by this browser if the inspector is not open when the request is received. I'll take a look at the JS here. I have to reload it. To get the correct chapter. I wonder if that's a factor for these other looking at the paragraph's controller delay. This is managed by update attributes. I think this might be a distinction between these two APIs, update attributes and update attribute, not plural. So trying to think which I prefer as a convention, whether to use a method that updates the object in memory in a subtle way, or whether to use one that does it in a a way that's less subtle about what it's doing, but it's also more verbose. Thinking about how I want to standardize these controllers so that they're all using the exact same code if I possibly can. I think I'll start by testing my theory that update attributes is actually, let me look at, okay, so I'm going to need to edit this controller as well, basically to match this one since there was that bug. So since this is going to be updated in a block, okay, here's the thing that's going on. Scratch what I said about the difference between update attribute and update attributes. That might be wrong. The difference is that in this case, I'm calling a method on this variable. In this case, I'm calling a method on a local variable, which has been passed into this block. And the object that this variable is holding is different from this one. Because when I call this method, it gives me a group of objects. And one of them is equivalent to this. It's representing the same data, but it's not the same object. I have basically two copies of the same thing, and I'm updating one of them, but this one doesn't know that it's being updated. So with all this clear to me now, I am going to prefer the format that I have here, where I reload the table of content in order to get the correct chapter identity. And so moving this code from the sections controller, actually I'm going to take all of this, from the sections controller to the paragraphs controller. And then just changing this from chapter ID to section ID. Okay, now we can perform another test. So if I delay this section, it moved into this chapter. If I refresh this, it remains in the correct place. So that's showing that both the interface update is correct and the data update is correct. I will have to test that for a paragraph, and I'll test it for a paragraph that has a citation. Okay, so it will have to have a citation and a, okay. So if I add a citation to this paragraph, Fate Reforged was opened first. And then I delay this paragraph into the following section. So this also needs to update here with the reload. So if I try to, I'll refresh this page first to get my interface synced up with my data. So if I now delay this paragraph into the following section, it moves into the correct position. If I refresh it to look at the data, it remains in the correct position. Okay. Great. So delay is working for sections. Edit and update working for sections. Let's work on create and append. Did I already do those? No, just edit, update, and delay. Okay. So if I want to add a new section to this chapter, this is my control right here. I can look at the chapter editing template, and here is the code that generates that link. Okay, so this is an interesting dilemma here. The new version of this link needs the chapter table of content. In the context of this file, I don't think I have that. So this file is either rendered by this template or by this template. Here's where it's edited here. So in this context, I have the chapter table of content. In this one, I don't. Since this chapter-wise editor is what I consider my primary interface, I'll go with that first. So I'll go to the chapters controller, look at the edit action. Okay, so I have the table of content here. Excellent. And so I can pass it into the template. Right here, chapter table of content, table of content. And I'll follow on by seeing if I can effectively make the same edit right away in this template. I do, yeah. So chapter table of content is this. So now from within this template, I know that I have access to that variable. And I can now replace this interface with the new one. append to chapter. Okay, so let's try refreshing this and seeing if everything is happy so far. So looking at the status bar at the bottom of the browser, you can see that this now refers to a table of content. And we can move forward with the controller code. So the chapters controller append should look like sections controller append. Chapters append.js should look like sections append.js. So it's similar, except I'm now passing a table of content into the form. Section form should now be revised so that it takes a table of content. Actually, I've already done that because that's what I did when we were working on the edit update loop. So this should be ready. And then, so that should be able to render. Okay, but it didn't. Uninitialized constant section helper sections. This may just be a typo in section helper. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what this is. Drafting old sets. Let's see. Classic Renegade sets. Magic fans have been designing their own sets for years. Some were designed while Mana Burn still existed. Okay, so the create flow, I forgot to revisit that before clicking. I'll again refer to the paragraphs controller and look at how that does create. So it starts by creating the paragraph, grabs the table of content, and then instead of calling locate, we're simply going to be creating a new table of content. And we're going to call it section table of content. And give it the new section ID. Then looking at the template that runs after that finishes, comparing it to this one. Okay, so just a subtle difference. This will now render off the table of content. try appending this now. Okay. Oh, section control has not been updated to take a table of content. Let's try this again. Okay, so visually this is correct. Reload the data and see if it's been persisted correctly. Yep, looks good. So I think we have our handle on create, edit, update, append, delay, and then we can look into promote and destroy. So promote in the paragraphs controller is right now like this. Start by getting the table of content, find the previous position, previous table of content. Then you update the ordering. Then you update the ordering. Okay, so that part's all the same. So let's test that out. Okay. Looking first at the server log, undefined method previous for class. Okay. So when I rewrote this, I mistakenly left this here rather than hanging it off of the variable that I had generated on line 34. So since that errored out before updating any data, I don't feel like I need to refresh this. I'll just try it again. Looks good. Refresh and mix packs can be above class renegade sets. And you guys on the YouTube are getting some exclusive content here. This is not going to appear in the book unless you think it should. Let me know. Promote, good to go, and then destroy should be pretty simple. Begins by looking up the table of content, grabbing its ordering, destroying it, and then getting the subsequent ones. I don't recall offhand what this is being used for. Let's see. Is it possible that this is just some older code that I no longer need. I think it probably is. I think this was used in the query when I was looking up the subsequent ones directly by constructing a longer scope. But now that subsequent is built into this model, I no longer need that. And you'll note that after this is destroyed, I can still call methods on it. That's because the in-memory version, so the in the database version of that has been deleted. But the in-memory version has simply been frozen. So I can still interact with it. And I do interact with it a fair amount. You can see here in the template, I also am referring to that after it's been destroyed. So cool detail there. Okay, so I can take the code from this and simplify this. So you can see here the previous way of getting the subsequent ones was putting all of these details into the scope and then saying that they should have an ordering greater than the position. So since I no longer need that query, I no longer need the position. So if I remove this, okay, that might be a template issue. Okay. Aha. I forgot to replace this query with the simpler one. So since that errored on the first line, the content actually was not destroyed. I don't need to refresh. Try this again. Goes away. Refresh, and it should still be gone. Okay, so apparently that was enough of a change to the markup that it didn't scroll me back down to the spot. Let's see if I can find it. Give you guys a quick... Oh, and it's also not loading my fonts right now. I wonder if my connectivity to the internet is a little slow. Or maybe it's just because this page is... Am I experiencing some kind of a JavaScript error that's halted stuff? Let's see. Syntax error. Interesting. I'm not sure what that situation is. I'm going to continue checking the results of that delete operation. Drafting old sets, I believe, was the chapter. Okay, yeah, I'm satisfied the delete worked. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page, see if there actually is some kind of a problem here, or if it's just kind of the browser choking on a really enormous piece of markup. Okay. It seems like my internet might be down right now because some external resources are failing to load, as are my fonts. So this is causing a couple of issues, but we're basically done with what we were doing anyway. So looking now at, we've edited promote, we've edited destroy, edited delay, update, edit, and create. And then in the chapters controller, we've edited append. The paragraphs controller, we've corrected the code for delay. And I will have to continue testing this. But for the time, I'm satisfied that we have tested everything at least once. And the next step is going to be to apply some of these editing tools to the chapter editing toolset. So please tune in for that, and perhaps later on we will be able to refactor a lot of this code into some shared helpers and a controller helper that will move it out of the way so our templates will look nice and clean.